into the fundamentals of DOT. I'm Dan Greer, I'm the COO of Eclipse DOT, and today we're just going to kind of talk about the basics of it. All right, we'll go ahead and kind of talk a little bit about what Eclipse DOT is. So we are a company that was designed by a driver, someone who used to drive in the industry, to help other companies, big companies and small companies, cover all of their compliance needs. We understand that compliance is really tough, and we understand that it's really complicated, and there's lots of rules and regulations that go around it, and it's, unless you're involved in it every single day, it's hard to stay on top of it. So our team's job is to help your team do what you're good at, which is get out there and run those trucks. So if you guys need help with any kind of compliance stuff, feel free to reach out to us with an email or a phone call, and we'll get you taken care of the best that we can. We're really affordable with our rates, and we really like helping smaller companies, especially kind of get on their feet and get moving forward in the right direction. A little bit about me. I've been in the industry for 15 years. I started out, I got my CDL when I turned 19. Shortly after that, I kind of moved into a safety position. I got kicked up into a DOT compliance position after that. I've been in the industry in all walks of it, small companies, 1 or 2 trucks, all the way up to a company that ran over 3,500 pieces of rolling stock. So pretty good sized company. Currently, Eclipse DOT works with some of the largest non-union contractors in the nation, which is pretty awesome. I've been an AAMVA certified CDL tester for 8 years, which is a pretty big thing to have. We're going on 9 years this year. CVSA is the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance, and what it is that's industry plus law enforcement, where we team together and work to make the regulations and the out of service stuff. And so we hold voting rights on 2 different committees, which is very big considering it's only made up of 50% industry. I've operated heavy equipment, married with 4 kids. We've just passed our 16th anniversary. She's tough to put up with me for that long. And then we live on my family's homestead here in Southwest Colorado. We've been here since 1902. And we also like working with youth and juniors. And then one thing that's not mentioned on here is we did start a nonprofit last year called God First Life, which is all about helping people live a God First life. And so that just gives you a little bit of information about me. Let's go ahead and jump right into the topic. Intra versus interstate. So what's the difference between intrastate and interstate? Well, intrastate is when you stay in one state. It's where you operate. So let's say that you're intrastate in Colorado. That means that you never leave the state of Colorado. Interstate is when you cross state lines, kind of like the interstate highway system. So if you're crossing state lines, that's considered interstate. And the other thing to kind of keep in mind with it is that sometimes interstate commerce is considered when you transport something that was built in a different state. They can call that interstate commerce. But for today, let's focus strictly on the trucking part of it, and that's going to be intrastate as if you operate within one state, interstate as if you cross state lines. Now, the other key to this is you have to be trying to make money in order to be considered commerce. Okay, you don't actually have to make money. We all know that we can get jobs and lose money on a job. But if we're trying to make money, that makes it commerce. So interstate commerce is crossing state lines while trying to make money. Intrastate commerce is staying within one state. The further out east we go, Ohio, like Rhode Island is really hard to stay intrastate in. Delaware, New Hampshire. Ohio's pretty big, but it's still a little tough to stay intrastate. Even if you're on a border, you probably need to be registered for interstate commerce with the DOT. And if you're not sure how you're registered right now, we can look that up for you, no problem. Just like I say, reach out to us a little bit. Okay, back to basics. Let's talk a little bit about this. The first thing we need to know is what the federal government considers a commercial vehicle. So they say that you're a commercial vehicle if your GCWR, gross combined weight rating, or GVWR, gross vehicle weight rating, is over 10,000 pounds. So if you're crossing state lines and your GVWR is over 10,000 pounds, you're considered a commercial vehicle. Now, that doesn't mean you have to have a CDL to drive that vehicle, but you do have to have a medical card and a driver file, and your vehicle has to have certain things on it, like a DOT number and the safety items and all that good stuff. Okay? So if you're a commercial vehicle that's 10,000 pounds and you're crossing state lines. Now, one of the other things we need to know is that New Mexico has an intrastate of 26,000 pounds. Colorado has an intrastate of 16,000 pounds, and Utah has an intrastate of 10,000 pounds. Now, all three of these states touch. If we go to Arizona, Arizona's 26,000 pounds too. So what does that mean? That means that if you're operating in intrastate commerce within the state of Colorado, not crossing state lines, you're not a commercial vehicle until you're rated at 16,000 pounds. Now, New Mexico is 26,000 pounds, like we said. So you wouldn't be considered a commercial vehicle if you operate only in the state of New Mexico, as long as you're not over 26,000 pounds, what the vehicle is rated at. Now, that doesn't mean that's what it weighs. It means that's what it's rated at. There's a big difference there. We all know that a 1-ton pickup can be rated at like 11,000 pounds and actually weigh only, 6,000 or 7,000 pounds. Or we can have a truck that's rated at 50 or 80,000 pounds and it only weighs 20,000 pounds. So it doesn't matter what you weigh, it's what the vehicle is capable of carrying. That's that GVWR. Now, this slide right here is really great because it talks about all the states that are rated at 10,000 pounds. So if we look on there, like Arkansas, California, Maryland, Ohio, Oregon, all those states follow federal regulations. Those guys say that if you're over 10,000 pounds, if you're rated over 10,000 pounds, then you're required to be a commercial vehicle. Again, you don't have to have a CDL. You're just a commercial vehicle. Driver file, commercial driver, but no CDL. So we call those non-CDL commercial drivers. Now, this flow chart is a really good tool to tell if you're a regulated driver. Regulated means that you fall under regulations by FMCSA or by the state for DOT or commercial vehicles. So if we start up here at the top, are you trying to make money with this vehicle? Yes or no? Okay, so here's an example. I've got my 3/4 ton pickup. It's rated at 10,000 pounds. And I hook up to my personal gooseneck trailer that's rated at 22,000 pounds. Now I run in and I pick up a backhoe as a rental machine from the local cat dealer for the weekend. And I'm going to take it out to my house and I'm going to, dig some holes to bury some trees in. I'm not trying to make any money with the product. I'm not taking the backhoe out to a job site and getting paid for it. Am I a commercial vehicle? No, because it's not being used to try to make money. Now, let's say I take that same truck, 10,000 pounds, that same trailer, 22,000 pounds, GCWR, gross combined weight of 32,000 pounds, and then I'm going to go to the local cat dealer and I'm going to pick up that backhoe again. And now I'm going to take it to my buddy's house to help him dig a trench to bury an electric line, and he pays me money for my time to dig that trench so he can bury that electric wire in there. Am I a commercial vehicle now? The answer is yes, because he paid me to do that job. I'm now a commercial vehicle. Nothing changed except for what I was doing with that truck, how I got money from that. So one was for recreational purposes. It was done for me. The other one was for a job. So I got hit harder, right? Because I was trying to make money off of it. I fell under different regulations. Even though it's the same outfit, it's the same truck, it's the same rig. Nothing's really changed except for what I'm doing with it. So are you trying to make money with it? Yes or no? If the answer is no, most likely you're not regulated, okay? If the answer is yes, is the GVWR over 10,000 pounds? And where we find the GVWR on trucks is on the driver's side door. We'll find it right inside the door, right next to the VIN tag or on the manufacturer's tag. On trailers, there's usually a plate that's somewhere near the neck or the tongue of the trailer, depending on how heavy the trailer is. I've seen some semi-trailers, they're usually in front of the jack stand. Some of them are on the front, if it's like a float. Or I've actually seen them, riveted to the frame, that kind of stuff as well. So that's where you're going to find that GVWR for those vehicles. Next is, so are we over 10,000 pounds? Yes or no? If the answer is no, we've got to ask ourselves, are we hauling hazardous materials, or is the vehicle designed to carry 16 or more passengers? So if the vehicle was designed to carry 16 more passengers, or if we're hauling a placardable amount of hazmat materials, then we're regulated. Actually, for those two instances, we'd have to have a CDL, even if the vehicle's under 10,000 pounds, or under 26,000 pounds, I should say. All right, the next thing is are we operating in interstate commerce? Are we crossing state lines? Yes or no? If the answer is no, then we want to come back and look at these state regulations to make sure that we're falling under the right state that we're operating in. Now, DOT regulations get a little bit confusing, so if you have questions on which states you're operating in, or if you only operate in certain states, feel free to reach out to us. We'll be happy to help give you that guidance and get you on the right page, because the last thing we want is for somebody to go out, start running, and then find out, oh man, I wasn't doing this right, and then they get into trouble, or they get sued, or there's litigation, or you get tickets, or something like that. We don't want that to happen, so feel free to reach out to us with your questions. We'd love to help you answer those. Now, the last thing we need to mention on this is there's 3 states in the entire nation that are completely different from every other state. So the states above it, I think there's like 13 or 14 states there that are at 10,000 pounds. Colorado, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania just had to be different. Colorado says you're not a commercial vehicle until you're rated over 16,000 pounds. Connecticut says you're not a commercial vehicle until you're rated over 18,000 pounds. And Pennsylvania says you're not a commercial vehicle until you're rated over 17,000 pounds. Now, the thing to keep in mind with this is that's not all 50 states. Every other state in the nation says you're not a commercial vehicle until you're rated at 26,000 pounds. Now that brings me to our next question. If we're in New Mexico and we operate in New Mexico, and New Mexico and Texas are both 26,000 pound states, and we cross state lines from Texas to New Mexico, they're both 26,000 pound states. Are we a commercial vehicle if we're rated under 26,000 pounds? You would think the answer would be no, because they're both 26,000 pound states. But that would be wrong. The answer is yes, because when you cross state lines, you fall under that interstate commerce regulation. So now you're falling under federal guidelines instead of each state's guidelines. And the federal government says you're a commercial vehicle once you've hit that 10,000 pound mark. So just because Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona are all 26,000 pound states, and you run through all 3 of those states in a day, you are still obligated to abide by, obligated to uphold, whatever you want to say, federal guidelines, and that means that it's 10,000 pounds or more. So let's run another example. Let's say I've got a 1-ton dually pickup. It's going to be rated at 14,500 pounds. Now, I'm not pulling a trailer. I'm just driving this 1-ton dually pickup. And I take it from, I don't know, let's say that Ohio is a 10,000 pound state, and we go from Ohio to Tennessee. Now, I know those states don't touch each other, but we got to go through Kentucky to get there or something, right? So we drive through Ohio and Kentucky, and we get to Tennessee. And now we know that we're a commercial vehicle because we're over 10,000 pounds. My question is that now we're in Tennessee and we're going to be in Tennessee for 3 weeks. Are we a commercial vehicle while we're operating in the state of Tennessee? Our truck is registered in Ohio, but we're operating in the state of Tennessee. Are we a commercial vehicle? The answer is no, not while we're in the state of Tennessee. Then we assume intrastate regulations for the state of Tennessee while we stay there. Now, when we come back from Tennessee to Ohio again, now then we're no longer operating under Tennessee's intrastate regulations. Now we have to operate under federal guidelines, which says 10,000 pounds is a commercial vehicle. So it gets a little gray here. There's a lot of mud in the water. It's kind of hard to understand. If you operate under federal regulations at all times, you're going to be okay in every single state, period. So the feds have set the maximum regulations for all the states. So if you want to operate under those all the time, kind of ensures that you're not going to run into big problems in each individual state. All right, let's talk about the CDL. So a CDL is a commercial driver's license. When is a CDL required? A CDL is required anytime a vehicle is rated over 26,000 pounds. Now, it doesn't have to weigh over 26,000 pounds. It just has to be rated over 26,000 pounds. So let's go back to our first example of my 3/4 ton pickup, rated at 10,000 pounds, pulling a trailer, a gooseneck trailer, rated at 22,000 pounds, and I'm grabbing that backhoe from the cat shop to take it to my house to plant some trees. Do I have to have a CDL to drive that vehicle? It's rated at 32,000 pounds. The answer is no, because it's not used for commerce. We're not trying to make money with it. Now, what if I take that same one and I take it to my buddy's house and I'm going to dig his electric trench? Do I have to have a CDL to drive that truck now? Yes, because you're using it for commerce. Now, one of the biggest questions that I get on this 26,000 pound rating is, hey Dan, how come I have to have a CDL to have a pickup pulling a trailer if it's over 26,000 pounds, but that guy driving down that road in that Class A motorhome that looks as big as a tour bus, and he's pulling a Jeep, and the Jeep's pulling a trailer, how come he doesn't have to have a CDL? Well, the answer is because it's for recreational use. There's a rule, an exemption in the FMCSA guidelines that says if you're using it for recreational use, no CDL is required. So that brings me to my next point. Let's say that I've got, a small Kenworth truck, a single axle tractor, and I'm pulling my fifth wheel with it. And I'm going to go out from Colorado to California to go visit Yosemite. And I cruise out there and I'm just enjoying my day. Now then, I take my dirt bikes with me. I'm not planning on doing anything, just riding and having fun. It's still recreation. Now on the way home, okay, I stop in Las Vegas and I run a track with my bikes. And I enter into a competition. Because I intend to win that competition, or I'm trying to win money in that competition, that's now commerce. And I have to be a regulated driver. So even though I didn't have to have a CDL to get to California because it was for recreational use, from Las Vegas home, I would have to have a CDL, or even from California to Las Vegas, I would have to have a CDL because I'm now in interstate commerce. Hopefully that makes sense. I know that there's kind of a lot of gray area there, but hopefully that kind of sinks in a little bit. Now let's talk about the three different classes of CDLs real quick. The first is a Class A. A Class A is any combination vehicle, so it has to be pulling a trailer, all right? Now, here's a great example. Let's look at one of those big, 120-ton cranes, all right? They're a giant crane. They weigh, how many thousands of pounds, right? 200,000 pounds, and they're going down the road. Is that a Class A or a Class B vehicle? Well, if that boom is sitting on a trailer that's hooked with a pintle hitch or some other type of coupling system, that's a Class A unit because it has a pintle hitch on it. It has a connection there. Now, let's say that the boom sits down and the crane carries the whole thing and there's no trailer with it. That's just a Class B. Doesn't matter how much the vehicle weighs, whether it's Class A or Class B. It matters whether it's coupled by any kind of coupling unit. Pintle hitch, fifth wheel, gooseneck and ball and hitch, whatever. That's what makes it a Class A if it's over 26,000 pounds. Now, you also need to know that if the trailer is rated over 10,000 pounds, that adds to the Class A. So if you have a trailer that's rated at 6,500 pounds and you're pulling it with an F550, something that's rated at 19,500 pounds, that puts you over that 26,000 pound mark. But because the trailer is less than 10,000 pounds, you don't have to have a Class A CDL to drive that vehicle. You just have to be a commercial driver. You don't even have to have a CDL because the trailer is rated under 10,000 pounds. All right, a Class B vehicle is any straight vehicle. So it's anything that's not pulling a trailer that has a GVWR, gross vehicle weight rating, of over 26,000 pounds. Good examples of those are water trucks, feed trucks, straight tractors, dump trucks, all those would be a Class B vehicle. Now, there's a few endorsements that go on to those CDLs as well, like passengers and hazardous materials, but we're going to talk about all those in a little bit. The last CDL we're going to talk about is a Class C CDL. Now, a lot of people say, why would I need a Class C CDL? That's a vehicle that's rated under 26,000 pounds. The truth is, there's only two reasons why you'd need a Class C CDL. The first one is if you're operating a vehicle that's equipped to carry 16 or more passengers. That requires a Class C CDL with a passenger endorsement. The other one is if you're transporting hazardous materials. So you could have a Toyota Corolla and be delivering medical oxygen to patients and have to have a Class C CDL if you have enough oxygen bottles in that vehicle. So those are the only two reasons why you would have a Class C CDL. Other than that, no CDL is required. Now, let's jump back for 2 seconds. Let's say that I have a water truck that's rated at 26,000 pounds even, okay? Not 26,001 pounds, not 27,000 pounds, but 26,000 pounds even. And that water truck has air brakes. Am I required to have a Class B CDL to operate that vehicle? Or a Class C CDL? Or do I just need to be a commercial driver with a medical card? The answer is, I just need to be a commercial driver with a medical card, depending on what state I'm operating in. So if it's going across state lines, then I'm a commercial driver. Even though the truck has air brakes, even though it has a tanker, no CDL is required because it's not rated over 26,000 pounds. Hopefully that kind of makes sense because that can get really confusing. Now, here's another example. I have a service truck. I work for a shop. Let's say I work for a cat house and I have a service truck that's rated at 25,000 pounds. Now that truck is a non-CDL vehicle, right? But let's say it has air brakes. Does that make it a CDL vehicle? No, it doesn't. That's a common misconception. Most people think because a truck has air brakes, you have to have a CDL to operate it. It's all based on the gross vehicle weight rating, what the vehicle is rated to carry. Let's talk a little bit about MOT, or materials of trade. So materials of trade is any kind of hazardous material that you use in the field. Fuel, diesel fuel that you haul to equipment is a material of trade. Propane cylinders, oxygen acetylene, both those are materials of trade. It's anything you use in the field. Now here's what you need to know is if it's a materials of trade, if you're using it in the field, you don't have to have a hazmat and you don't have to be placarded as long as the aggregate weight is less than 440 pounds per material. Now for fuel, for diesel fuel, that's 119 gallons. So if you have a capacity of 120 gallons in a drag-up tank, you have to have a hazmat and your truck has to be placarded. Even if it's in the back of a Toyota Tacoma pickup, you have to have a hazmat and your truck has to be placarded. Now, let's say that I'm delivering gas for a customer to use. I'm not going to use it in the field. I've picked it up at the warehouse and I'm going to take it out to the customer to use. Do I have to have a hazardous materials endorsement then? It depends on how much you're carrying. That changes to 1,000 pounds if you're not using it in the field, but transporting it, it's 1,000 pounds gross aggregate for all hazardous materials on your truck. Okay? Let's talk a little bit about the MCS 150. What is an MCS 150? Well, the MCS 150 is a form that you have to update with the federal government every 2 years, so biannually. The other thing you have to do is update your MCS 150 anytime there's a major change. If you add or lose a bunch of drivers, if you add or lose a bunch of trucks. Now what I call a bunch and what the federal government calls a bunch is two different things. They say anything more than a 10% change requires you to update your MCS 150. So if you have one truck and you go to two trucks, that's a 50% change. You have to update your MCS 150. Vice versa, if you have 5 trucks and you sell down to 3 trucks, that's about a 50% change. My math isn't that good. Sorry, guys. Anyways, that's about a 50% change. And so that means you would have to update your MCS 150. Anything over 10%, you need to go in and update it. Now, it's really easy to update this. If you haven't done it and you need help doing it, feel free to reach out. Our team can help you get that done, number one. Number two, we can help give you the tools to where you can do it on your own going forward, if that's something you'd like as well. Now, there is something you need to know about when you need to update your MCS 150, and it's all based on the last two numbers of your DOT number. Let's say you have a DOT number that ends in 78, okay? The 8 tells you the month that it has to be updated. 8 is for August, just like it is. So 1 through 9 is September, and 0 is October. Now, the second number in, the 7, tells you whether you updated on odd years or even years. Since it's a 7, that's an odd number. You updated on odd years. So in August of odd years, 2021, 2023, whatever year it is, you're going to update your DOT number. Now, let's take a different number. Let's say that your last two digits of your number are 60. You would update that in October of even years. Okay? That's some really good information to have. And this slide right here, this ai.fmcsa.dot.gov, that's where you can update that at. Okay? Couple things you need to know about Eclipse DOT. We're in the process of creating our own proprietary software. It is going to be awesome. It's going to revolutionize the industry for compliance. We're making it to where we're taking the complexity out of compliance with every step. You're going to be able to enter in your DOT number. You're going to be able to enter in your DOT PIN number. And it's going to tell you whether you're up to date. It's going to help you determine when you need to update that number. And it's going to send you reminders for your driver's files and all that stuff, which we're going to get into here in a little bit. It's going to make that so simple. It's going to go through it all. Now, I'm here to tell you that we're going to roll that out in the very near future, okay? Second off, you need to know that we've helped some of the largest utility companies in the Pacific Northwest. We got hired to do a job for them, and they had over 400 drivers. And when they called us, they called me and they said, "Hey, Dan, we got less than 10% compliance right now, and we need to fix this." I said, "Yeah, you do. You guys are in trouble, man." So we went up and we helped them fix it. Within 30 days, we took their compliance rating from 10% to 95%. All right? We submitted over 1,000 documents to get them into compliance in less than 30 days. We sat down with over 390 drivers. It was huge. It was huge. The next thing you need to know is that since the inception of Eclipse DOT, we've helped over 2,500 drivers get their CDL tests. That's big. And guess what? We're going to do even more than that in the near future. We're working on creating a program for ELDT, entry-level driver training, that's going to help businesses train their drivers. And we're going to get into that entry-level driver training here in just a little bit. Currently, we're also managing close to 1,000 driver files, and that number is growing monthly. We might even have more than that by now. All right, let's jump into drug testing program. What's your drug testing program look like? Do you do initial drug tests? I hope so, especially for CDL drivers. All right, if you don't, you need to go back and get those guys drug tested right now. Don't wait another day to get your initial drug tests done. You also have to have proof that you're in a random program or a consortium. Now, you can have your own random program. That's 100% possible. There's no problems with that at all. But you do need to know that if you do that, you have to supply your own documentation. If you work through another consortium, a third-party program that helps you do that, they'll supply all the documentation for you. The best practice is to send your driver's list to your consortium on a monthly basis, especially quarterly, okay? Now, you also have to have a drug test policy in place. If you don't have a drug test policy in place, you need to get one written. We can help you write one. You can write one on your own. We can give you advice on how to write your own if you want to. But you need to make sure that you cover everything that's in Part 49 of the CFRs. So that's the revised statutes is what the CFRs are. And Part 49 is the part that deals specifically with drug testing. If you need help with that, let us know. We'll be happy to get you set up. Make sure that your drug test policy is signed by all of your employees, all of your drivers, okay, that are as part of that. Now, if you have a DOT consortium and non-DOT drug testing, you want to separate those two. It can be the same policy, but your DOT policy definitely needs to be specified for CDL drivers. Now, as of January of 2020, they changed it. So let's say you had a drug test policy in 2019 and you updated it in December of 2019. Go back and look at it to make sure that you have 12 points in that drug test policy. If you don't have 12 points in there, let us know. We can help you out and we can tell you which points need to be there. Let's jump into driver qualification files. This is probably the hardest part of compliance because it's so tedious. There's a few things we have to have in a DQ file. The first one is we have to have a motor vehicle report, or an MVR. For every driver, we have to have one pulled within 45 days of when that driver starts driving for us, number one. And then we have to pull one every year after that. We also have to have a driver's license. We have to have their original driver's license, not from when they originally started driving, but when they originally started driving for us, as well as their current license in the last 3 years. So what that means is that we don't have to go back and get their license for the last 3 years if they just start working for us. We have to have their license from today's date, and then as they come back, as they work for us for 3 years forward, that's when we have to have their driver's license for the last 3 years. We have to have their current medical card. The medical card has to be valid. So we have to have the original plus the last 3 years of medical card. Not only that, we have to go in and verify that the National Registry number matches the medical card and that the doctor's name matches the National Registry. So we've got to have all that, and then we've got to notate when that was done. We have to have a driver's application. Now, the driver's application is a little bit crazy, but we're going to talk about it. You have to have some things in the driver's application. The employee's name, your company name, your company's address, the date, the employee's date of birth, their social security number, their driver's license number, the expiration, the endorsements, the restrictions, where they've operated in the last 5 years or any kind of experience. You have to have where they've lived for the last 3 years. You have to have 10 years of previous employment history. Okay, we also have to have, for each employer, we have to know the company name they worked for, the city and state they worked in, their position, when they worked there, start date, month and year, end date, month and year, reason for leaving, were they subject to FMCSR's federal regulations, were they subject to US DOT? After the driver's application, we've also got to have a driver's statement that says, hey, yeah, everything is true and correct. A driver's license statement. Hey, I'm only going to have one driver's license. My license is going to be valid. If my license is ever not valid, I'm going to go ahead and tell the company before I operate commercial vehicles or within 24 hours. A statement of hours, which is saying how many hours they've worked for the past 7 days. We have to have that when we initially hire them. We keep that for 6 months. And then we also have to do background screens for the last 3 years. So, after that, a certificate of violations is next. Now, a certificate of violations is something the driver fills out. It's a statement saying if they've gotten any violations over the last year. That's it. Then they sign it. It has to have their name on it, date, their signature, that kind of stuff. Annual review is done by the company. Now, your annual review is something where you look at their MVR and you say, hey, yeah, this guy's still legal to operate commercial vehicles for us. You have to do that every year. Plus, you have to keep the original, and then you have to go back the last 3 years. So if somebody's worked for you for 5 years, you're only going to have 4 annual reviews in there. The original plus the last 3 years. They've worked for you for 10 years. You're only going to have 4 of those documents in there as well. Now, let's talk a little bit about those 3. There's actually 4 things that I grouped together in a driver qualification file to make it super easy to manage. One is the certificate of violations. I do that at the same time of year, every year for the company. It makes it so much simpler. That way, it doesn't matter if somebody got hired in January or if they got hired in November. If we do them every December, they're always done and we don't have any lapses in it. Annual review is the same way. Both those are actually on the same sheet of paper using our driver qualification packet. The next thing is the motor vehicle report. I pull the motor vehicle report for the companies that we work with the same time of year as well. That makes it so much easier to work with because they're all done at the same time. That way, your motor vehicle report, your certificate of violations, your annual review, and the last thing is clearinghouse request. And we're going to get into the FMCSA clearinghouse here in just a second, but I pull all four of those at the same time every single year. That way, they're all done. Doesn't matter if you've worked for the company for 2 minutes, 2 days, or 6 months. They're all renewed at the same time, so you're never out of compliance for something silly like a little piece of paper. Let's talk about the road test. When do we have to have a road test for an employee? There's 3 times. One is when they don't hold a CDL. So anybody who's operating a vehicle in interstate commerce under 26,000 pounds who's a commercial driver. They have to have the med card, the driver's license, this whole driver qualification thing. They just don't have to have a CDL. But we have to have a road test for that guy. Okay, the other time is if they're operating tanker vehicles. Now, a tanker is considered anything that's capacity is over 1,000 gallons that's not permanently fixed to the vehicle. So let's say we have a tank that's 1,200 gallons mounted to a truck. That's a tanker vehicle. It requires a tanker endorsement to operate that vehicle. We have to have a road test for that employee in a tanker vehicle in order to make sure they're competent and capable of operating that vehicle before we send them out on their own on the road. The last one is for long combination vehicles. Doubles and triples, anything over 85 feet in length. Okay? All right, entry-level training. So entry-level training is only required for guys who don't hold their CDL. If you have a driver that doesn't have a CDL, they have to go through entry-level training. Now, entry-level training is super simple. You can do it in less than 10 minutes. You have a conversation with your driver talking about roadside inspections, GVWR, interstate versus intrastate, company regulations, DOT, post-accident procedures, all that stuff, and you're good to go. You cover it, sign off on a little paper saying they've completed it, they can sign it, you can fill out a certificate, you can do whatever, and then you save that. The only other time you have to do entry-level training for a driver in your company is when they haven't had their CDL for over a year. So if you help somebody get their CDL, you need to have entry-level training in their driver file for them as well. So if you hire somebody that's been on the road for 10 years, you don't have to put them through entry-level driver training. Entry-level training for the road, for the DQ file. Sorry, we're a little confusing here in a second. Now, if you help them get their CDL, or if you hire them and they've had their CDL less than a year, then you have to put them through this training to make sure they're good. Again, you can do that all in-house. All right, let's talk about vehicle maintenance files. Here's the one thing I want to tell you on vehicle maintenance files. Don't ever let somebody tell you that they'll do them for you cheaper than you can manage your own, because you're going to do all the work anyways. Driver qualification files are a little bit different story because there's some stuff in there that goes in on the back end and getting everything just right that makes it tough. So when it comes to vehicle maintenance files, though, trust me, you can do these on your own. Create a spreadsheet. Make sure that it has owner of vehicle, when you bought the vehicle, what year the vehicle was manufactured, your unit number, the VIN number, and the tire size. Wait, what? Tire size? Why do I have to have tire size for it? Well, the federal government, in all of their infinite wisdom, has said that you have to have tire size for all of your vehicles in writing in the vehicle file. So if you do on paper, write all this stuff on the front of the folder. You'll be good. If you like electronic like I do and digital, so it's easier to manage, easier to change, easier to update, then put it in a spreadsheet. Just make the lists across the top, put unit number down the side, and you're good to go. We actually would be happy to send you our thing for a fleet. Just ask for it. We'll be happy to send you a copy of our spreadsheet. Just ask us. We'll give you a blank one that you can work with for all of your equipment. Send us a quick email, let us know that you'd like it. We'll be happy to forward it on to you. A few things you have to have in the maintenance file. You have to have the annual inspection. So every commercial vehicle is required to have an annual DOT inspection every year. Now, certain states, like Texas, require that you get an inspection for registration. So make sure that if it's a commercial vehicle, again, let's talk about our 3/4 ton pickup. It's not normally a commercial vehicle, but if I put any trailer behind it and I'm crossing state lines, now then it's a commercial vehicle. So we want to make sure that we get a DOT annual inspection for our registration renewal in Texas. California is kind of the same way. There's some states back east that are that way. Now, you can do your own annual DOT inspections as long as you have at least 1 year experience in a shop working on trucks. That's all it takes. Or if one of your guys has that type of experience, you can sign off on for them to do the annual inspections in-house as well. Now, all of your trucks and all of your trailers are required to have annual DOT inspections on them. I know, it seems crazy that we have to do an annual DOT inspection on a trailer, on a bumper pull trailer, but we do. Same thing with our pickups. Same thing with our semis. Same thing with our water trucks. We have to have an annual DOT inspection on everything, and it has to be done every year. Now, we have to keep the most recent annual inspection plus one more. So if you have 2 annual inspections in your vehicle maintenance file, you'll be good to go. Now, any other inspections you have, you can go ahead and put in there, like daily vehicle inspections. You can throw in crane inspections, stuff like that. Need to go into that file as well. Keep in mind, for your daily vehicle inspections, your DVIRs, you only need to keep those for 90 days. We're going to get into DVIRs here in just a second. You also need to keep maintenance receipts for 1 year. Everything you do to the truck, from oil changes to changing slack adjusters to major maintenance on like your rear end or your rear main seal or transmission, to tires, to mud flaps, anything, you need to go ahead and keep those maintenance receipts for 1 year. If you do them digitally, my recommendation is to save them by date and then by the unit number. That way, they're all together by date, and if you go to purge your system after a year, you can just select those files, move them into a different folder, and get them out of that maintenance folder. That way, they're not sitting there cluttering it up in case you get an audit. If you get an audit, you don't ever want to give them more information than they ask for, because you could be incriminating yourself by giving them more. That's crazy, right? But it happens. You can still be incriminating yourself by giving more information. Always give them exactly what they ask for and nothing else. The last thing you need is a systematic maintenance process. Now, they tell you this shouldn't be written on a napkin. The truth is, it just has to be written. You can write it on toilet paper. You can write it on anything. Just write it and throw it in the file, and it can be as simple as, we change oil every 5,000 miles. We change air filters every 250 hours. We do transmission service every 100,000 miles. Now, keep in mind that when you write this systematic maintenance process for what you're doing, you need to keep to that process. You don't want to go over it. So if you write it and say that you change oil every 7,500 miles and you wait till 15,000 miles to change oil, that's a problem. You want to say that you change oil every 15,000 miles and then that you come back and show that you've actually changed it more frequently than what your maintenance service shows. So make sure that your systematic maintenance process aligns with the manufacturer's recommendations, and make sure that you're not going over those either as you move forward. DVIRs, daily vehicle inspection reports. All right? So the DVIR must contain the necessary information like what you inspected, the unit number, that kind of stuff, the date. Now here's my question. Do we have to fill out a daily vehicle inspection report every day we operate a commercial vehicle? The answer is no, we don't. Because of the Paper Reduction Act in 2017, they said now we only have to fill out or complete a DVIR form anytime there's a problem. So yes, you can totally fill those out every day. And yes, our 100% recommendation is to have your drivers complete DVIRs every single day. Because guess what? In litigation, if you didn't document it, it didn't happen. So we like to carry a document trail with us all the time. Now, make sure that you coach your drivers what to put on those DVIRs. Make sure that it's important stuff, not silly little stuff like, oh, hey, my radio didn't turn on today. Important one would be, hey, the truck's low on antifreeze, added antifreeze, stuff like that. Hey, the seatbelt is ripped or torn or frayed. Need to be replaced. The windshield's cracked. The wipers don't work. The defroster doesn't work. Anything that's going to get you pulled over at a roadside inspection and give you a violation, that's what you want to put on there. So coach your drivers not to put the little insignificant stuff on there, but to put the major stuff. The thing you need to realize as a company is anytime anybody puts anything on there, any kind of discrepancies, any kind of problems, it now requires 3 signatures. One from the driver, one from a mechanic or safety personnel saying that, hey, this vehicle is safe to operate, or hey, we did fix this, and a third one from the driver or from another driver saying, yep, this did get fixed. I attest that it's good to go down the road now. Does not have to be the same driver that signed it the first time, but it does have to be a driver in your system. So you want to make sure that you coach your drivers not to put a bunch of junk on these vehicle inspection reports. Make sure they're doing them right. Now, we have to keep these for 90 days. So again, my recommendation is, I love digital, but if you're a paper guy, that's not a problem. Do them paper, but leave them in the book. Throw the book away after you've had it for 3 months. Go to the next book, go to the next book, and then just keep them in the books, okay? Any out-of-service inspection you get with a roadside, at a roadside inspection, you should complete a DVIR for that, unless it's something like load securement. If it's anything that deals with vehicle maintenance, go ahead and complete a DVIR for that roadside inspection, including those violations, and then attach that to the maintenance receipts and attach that to the roadside inspection and keep that in the same file in the same area. Okay? We're going to get into those in just a minute. Also, a certification of repair. So that's the receipts. If you repaired it in-house or if you repaired it out of house, then you would keep the receipts for that as well. Operation of unsafe vehicle. Now, we don't want to show that we've ever operated an unsafe vehicle. And honestly, we don't want an unsafe vehicle on the road. My family's on the same road as my trucks run. So I know that I want my trucks to be going down the road safe, and I want them to be in good, safe operating condition. That's where those 3 signatures come into play, showing that that was not an unsafe vehicle to be operated. Also, if you have an operation of an out-of-service vehicle, that's a major violation. So if you show that you didn't fix a vehicle, but you continued to operate it, then you could get in big trouble for that in an audit, and especially in litigation. Let's talk about roadside inspections. Now, I recommend keeping your roadside inspections in a completely different folder than anything else. Just put them in their own folder altogether. Don't put them in the driver's folder. Don't put them in a personnel folder. Don't put them in the drug test folder. Don't put them in the vehicle maintenance folder. Create a roadside inspection folder and keep those there. Now, these are the inspections that you get that are done by officers on the roadside or at a port of entry. We have to keep these inspections for a minimum of 1 year. My recommendation personally is to keep them for 2 years. There's very few things that I recommend going over or above and beyond what the federal guideline is. But because you're scored on these for 2 years and because you can get them removed from your score for up to 2 years, I recommend you keep these roadside inspections for 2 years. All right. Like we talked about, store them in a different file. Number 3, if there are violations found, you need to correct those violations before you dispatch that vehicle again. Let's say that they didn't put you out of service at the roadside stop. They allowed you to continue to operate through the day. Once you get done with the day and you get back to the shop, then that vehicle needs to be fixed before you can put it back on the road again. That's a common misconception people have. Is they say, oh, we can run it till we get fixed. We'll run it till we get caught again. No, don't do that. Fix that. If you had a slack adjuster that was almost out of adjustment and they marked it as a violation, fix that before you send that vehicle back out. Now, you also have 15 days to complete that, to fix that, and send it back in. So your vehicle can't be dispatched again until it's fixed, but you do have 15 days to get that vehicle in to get it fixed. After that, you need to sign it once it's been fixed and send it back to the state which it came from. So on the top of that inspection, it's going to have a place where to send that. Again, if you're one of our clients, if you work with us for stuff, we help you guys take care of this. We send it back to the state. We send you reminders saying, hey, have you got this taken care of yet? Those are things that make a big difference. All right, make sure that you put your maintenance receipts with it and your DVIR, including the violations that were found with it for the day, and then keep those all for 1 year in the file. Now, here's my recommendation. When you have one that has violations of it, make a copy of it. Put it with the maintenance receipts in the vehicle maintenance file, okay? Also, If it doesn't have any receipts, oh my gosh, if it doesn't have any violations, then just throw it into the roadside inspections file. If it has violations, take that copy that you made to put with the vehicle maintenance file and put the other copy in the roadside inspections file. It's okay to have duplicates on little things like this because you're not going to get a ton of inspections every year. Big companies that have 1,000 trucks usually get like 400 or 500 inspections a year. I've seen small companies that have less than 20 trucks get less than 5 inspections a year pretty regularly, depending on where they're running from. Now, this is called the SMS or CSA scores, and this is a way awesome tool that you can use that you have at your fingertips every day. Now, they're working on changing this and updating it, but for right now, let's talk about what we've got. So this is one for Eclipse DOT. We can see what the DOT number is, what their address is, how many drivers they have, how many vehicles they have, and how many inspections they've had in the last 2 years, all from this far column over here. Now, if we go into the center column, we can see the safety rating. We can see out of service, OOS, is the out of service percentage for our company. It says how much percentage we are of out of service. Now, the national average one, that one shows what the national average is for out of service. If our numbers are lower than the national average, that's a good thing. If they're higher than the national average, they might even be red on here, and then we could be in danger of an audit. Now let's talk a little bit about these categories. Unsafe driving. What do you think is included in unsafe driving? Well, seatbelt tickets, speeding, failure to obey signs, talking on a handheld device or using a handheld device, talking on your cell phone in your hand. That would be a unsafe driving. Crash indicator is all based on crashes. Hours of service is all based on your hours of service. So whether you get a violation or not, that falls under hours of service. Vehicle maintenance is anytime you get an inspection with a violation that deals with vehicle maintenance. So some vehicle maintenance ones would include like lights out, brakes out of adjustment, tires, oil in the grease leak, that kind of stuff. Controlled substances. So there's only really one way that you're going to get a controlled substance violation on here, and that's if your guy or gal is operating a commercial vehicle and they have alcohol in the cab of the truck, or they get caught on like a DUI. Now, also keep in mind that anytime you get audited, it can affect any section of these safer ratings, okay? Hazardous materials is anything that deals with hazmat. Driver fitness. Nope, we're not talking about what kind of shape your driver's in. Thank goodness, right? No, we're talking about were they qualified to operate that vehicle? Did they have a medical card? Was their medical card up to date? Was it submitted to the state? Did they have a CDL if it was a CDL vehicle? If it was a tanker vehicle, do they have a tanker's endorsement? That kind of stuff. Insurance is that happens when you get pulled over and you don't have insurance and you're operating. It goes into that category. Now, you can see these anytime, anywhere for your company. For any company, there's only a few categories you can't see. If you guys ever want help pulling your CSA or SMS scores, shoot us an email, reach out to us. We'd be happy to show you how to do that, walk you through it. That way you can do it on your own, send you a monthly snapshot, whatever you want. We'll help you out with that. Electronic logging devices, ELDs. Man, these things are a lot of fun. No, they're not a bad thing. They're actually really good for big companies because they really cut down on hours of service violations. Now, an ELD is required in every single vehicle unless you're operating under an exemption, like utility exemption, short haul exemption, ag exemption, one of those, okay? Or if your vehicle's engine is older than a 2000. So they call those glider kits. You can get a brand new truck. You can get a truck that was built yesterday that has a 1999 engine in it that's been completely overhauled and rebuilt, and you don't have to have an ELD. Now, you still have to abide by hours of service. Let's not get crazy. But you don't have to have an ELD in that truck in order to operate it. Now, ELDs have to plug into the ECM, the electronic computer module of every truck. That's just the way it works. And it has to document certain things like GPS location, when the vehicle reaches 5 miles an hour, all this other stuff. So you want to make sure that you have an ELD in your truck if you're not operating under one of those exemptions, or if your truck's engine is not older than 2000. All right, hours of service. So there's been some changes to the hours of service. FMCSA updated these in 2020. Crazy. They deregulated DOT just a little bit. It's absolutely awesome. I love that they deregulated it. Now let's talk about what they did. So it used to say that you had to take a 30-minute break after being on duty for 8 hours. Now you'd have to take a 30-minute break after driving for 8 hours. Not being on duty, but driving. It also says that your break can be on duty, not driving. Before it had to be off duty. So again, they changed this rule to be 30 minutes of drive time. No, oh my gosh. After 8 hours of drive time, you have to take a 30-minute break, and that break can be on duty. It does not have to be off duty. It can also be sleeper berth. It just can't be driving. They changed sleeper berth. They split it. It used to be 8 and 2. Now it's 7 and 3. You can spend 7 hours in the sleeper, 3 hours somewhere else, and still be okay. Short haul exemption, it changed from 100 air miles and 12 hours to 150 air miles and 14 hours. Now, air miles are measured from where you start and end each day. So let's say I start, I don't know, at Eclipse DOT here in Hesperus, Colorado, and I go out 150 air miles from there. That's all the way into Utah, all the way down to New Mexico, all the way over here, all the way up to Pueblo. It's a great big circle that gets us in there. Now, the key is you have to abide by both of those to qualify for short haul. You have to stay within the 150 air mile radius. You can drive 1,000 miles inside that 150 air miles, but you have to stay inside of that circle. The second is I have to get back to my home base within 14 hours of coming on duty. So if I come on duty at 6 a.m., I have to be back to my home base by 8 p.m. Okay? I can't stay the night somewhere else. I can't do anything else. I got to be back to my home base by 8 p.m. Now, under the short haul exemption, I am allowed one 16-hour day every single week. What that means is that there's one day a week that I can come back to my home base at 10 p.m. and still be legal. But I can't do that 2 days in a row as a CDL driver. As a non-CDL driver, I am allowed two 16-hour days every week. Now, the other thing that changed was emergency conditions or adverse driving conditions. What they did is they said that they added 2 hours, not only to the drive time, but 2 hours to the on-duty time. So if you encounter adverse driving conditions on the road, now then you're allowed to operate the vehicle up to 13 hours a day for driving, and you're allowed to be on duty up to 16 hours a day instead of 14 for adverse driving conditions. Now, what are adverse driving conditions? The way they define them is anything that is the dispatcher who's sitting in a different place would not have known about. Traffic jams, accidents, maybe snow, maybe road, maybe freezing rain, those kind of stuff are included in adverse driving conditions. One of the biggest ones I think about is in Colorado, in the fall, the colors change. And every single person who lives in Denver likes to come out and go to the mountains and look at the colors. And so Friday, if you're taking a specific highway, 285, out to try to get to southwestern Colorado, you could be stuck in traffic for 2 to 3 hours longer than you normally would be to go through from that same drive. Now on Sunday, it's the exact opposite. All those crazy people are coming back into Denver. That way they can get back to Monday for the rat race that they're joining. So I've seen traffic backed up for almost 4 hours coming back on 285 into Denver on a Sunday afternoon in the fall. So you want to be careful and make sure you notate that adverse driving condition whenever you utilize it. Okay? Let's talk a little bit about the clearinghouse. Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse took effect January 6th of 2020. Now, if you're not already doing the clearinghouse for your CDL drivers, don't wait. Start now. Do it today. Because guess what? If you wait another day, then you're just another day out of compliance. You're already in danger of facing pretty good fines if you haven't done this for your CDL drivers. Now, if you don't have CDL drivers yet, maybe you have a truck but really no drivers, you haven't driven the truck at all, then you don't have to stress about it. Just do it before you start driving that truck in any kind of commerce, intra or interstate. Now, this is super simple. What it does is it says that you have to pull a full query for all new drivers to your company. It costs $1.25. Okay, it's not very hard to do. If you need help setting up your clearinghouse account, reach out to us. We'll be happy to help. That's what we do. We do that for all of our customers. We actually do all their clearinghouse queries for them. The second thing is it says that you have to run a limited or a partial query every single year for every CDL driver that you have. Now, the key here is CDL. Let's say that I operate vehicles, but not everybody's a CDL driver. Do I have to run a clearinghouse query on my non-CDL drivers? No. No, you don't. Do I have to do initial drug tests for my non-CDL drivers? No, you don't. All of this is only required for CDL drivers unless you're operating under FTA, Federal Transit Authority, which is when you get government grants for transportation. Okay? Now, this is super simple to do. I recommend that you print these off after you run them. If it is a full query, the employee is going to have to log in and give you permission to view that. If it's a limited query, you just have to have a signed consent on file for the employee. No big deal. Easy to do. If you need that consent waiver, reach out. We'll be happy to help you. This is a little bit more about it, about the clearinghouse. Now, we talked about all this. Again, we have to keep the original query plus the last 3 years in the driver file, just like everything else. Now, remember those safety background checks we talked about that we have to do with the driver file and with the driver app? Those go away as soon as this clearinghouse has been in effect for 3 years for all FMCSA drug applications. Okay, if you're under PHMSA and you're still reaching out for those, you still have to do that. But this is part of it. Okay, entry-level driver training. I know this is what a lot of you guys are on here today for. I know this is why you're here. This is big. So entry-level driver training is set to take effect February 7th of 2022. Do I see them pushing it back? No. They've already pushed it back 2 years, and I don't see them pushing it back again. I think it's set to take effect, and I look for it to take effect next February. I don't see any reason why they'd push it back. Do I love it? No. What are we going to do to help? Our company is here to help other companies. We are going to create a program that is going to help companies train their own drivers on their own equipment, and then they only have to spend a day or two with us after they're a sufficient, proficient driver with you in order to get their CDL. So what entry-level driver training does is it requires all drivers who are getting their CDL or upgrading their CDL to go through an accredited CDL trainer. Now, the question we get a lot is, how can I become accredited? What does it take? Well, it's super simple. You have to have your curriculum written out, you have to have your exams designed, and you have to submit that to the FMCSA saying, it's called a TPR, third-party registry system. So you're going to go to that TPR, or training provider registry system. You're going to go to that TPR website, enroll your company's name, say, hey, I want to do this, and then they're going to add your name to the list. Now, it's your job after somebody finishes your training that you update them in the list, and then they can be scheduled for their CDL test after it's been updated. What a pain, right? Oh my gosh. So, we're working on some ideas and some ways to have this work for businesses. We've done the figures. We think that it's going to cost businesses, we don't think, we know that it's going to cost a business over $10,000 to get a driver a CDL. That's a huge number compared to today's numbers. Let's say that a driver goes through a CDL training program and it takes 8 weeks. Let's say that it only takes 4 weeks. That makes life simpler. Well, let's say it takes 8 weeks. Why not? So, it takes 8 weeks. The program costs $4,000. There's $4,000. All right? You're going to pay the employee to go through the program. There's another $4,000. You're paying $500 a week for 8 weeks. That's $4,000. All right. Now then, you're also going to give them either a subsidy or you're going to pay for their room and board, because chances of finding a program right next to you for CDL training is very slim, and they're going to fill up really fast, especially in small rural areas. So now then, you've got to send them somewhere. That's another $4,000 in meal costs. We're up to $12,000. All right, that it's going to cost the company to get this guy or gal their CDL. Now, on top of that, now you've got to figure, okay, I've paid this employee for 4 weeks and now I have to, or 8 weeks, now I have to bring him back in and train him for another month before they're proficient to operate. Because we all know the CDL training facilities, while they're great, while they have a great purpose, they instill bad habits. Just like when you ride with a driver, everybody gets bad habits. Just what happens? It's part of life. So then you have to take those bad habits out of them, and then you have to train them on what they're going to be doing for your company. There's another $4,000. We're up to $16,000 to get somebody their CDL. We want to offer companies the opportunity to come in. You train your own guys. They get their permit. You ship them to us with a truck and then for a day, or we'll come to you and get them in the truck and we drive with them and do everything we need to do. We give them the CDL test. They go back to the state. They get their license. Boom, you're done. You've got them, and it'll be low cost. We're talking minimal numbers. Nowhere near $16,000 and nowhere near the time lost with the guy or the time with the vehicle or the time out or the time that you've got invested in them in general. So entry-level driver training is going to require theory and behind-the-wheel training for anybody getting a Class A, anybody upgrading from a Class B to a Class A, anybody who's getting their Class B, getting their passenger, getting their school bus, or getting their hazardous materials endorsement for the first time. Notice, there's no mention of upgrading or dropping the air brake restriction. There's no mention of upgrading or dropping from the O restriction, which is a no tractor trailer. But do you really think they're going to allow you to get that and go through another skills test without going through this third-party training, without going through the training for it for entry-level driver? I doubt it. I see them updating and upgrading that in the very near future. So here's the things you need to know. They've said that there's no required minimum times. Now, we all know that you have to hold your permit, your CDL permit, for 14 days before you can take your skills test. That's plenty of time if you're behind the wheel for 8 hours a day. That's 80 hours of behind the wheel time that you can come back and take your test. It also says that training providers must use assessments either in written or electronic format to determine that the trainees are proficient in all units of the theory of curriculum. And they have to pass those with 80%. Okay? We told you what we're going to do. We're going to join that TPR. We're going to be a third-party trainer. We're going to be focusing on businesses, not on individuals. We don't really, this is going to sound wrong, but we don't really care about Joe Blow who wants to get a CDL. We want to help you, the business owner, make sure that when you have somebody that you want to run up through the ranks and help them get their CDL to move forward, that we can help you get there. Our focus is to help businesses. That's what we want to do, is we want to help businesses. Our process is going to be web-based training for online, so they can do it anytime, anywhere, with no problems. Over their phone, on the computer, whatever. In the evenings, it's going to cover everything for the in-class. It'll be behind the computer, not actually in a classroom with a bunch of people. So they can do it anytime, anywhere, which is a great asset. It's a great aspect of it. And our program is going to save you tons of money in the end because it's going to be designed for businesses that are training their own drivers. All right, let's talk a little bit about CDL restrictions. Now, we're going to go through this list real quick just so you know what it is. E means you can't drive a CDL vehicle with a standard transmission. L means you can't drive a CDL vehicle with air brakes. N and M only relate to passenger vehicles. So M says you can't drive a Class A passenger vehicle. That's a vehicle that's pulling a trailer that has passengers in the trailer. And N is a Class B passenger vehicle. So if you have a Class C CDL with a passenger endorsement, then you would also have an N restriction. All right. O is for no tractor trailer. That means like a fifth wheel style tractor trailer connection. So a pintle hitch gives you an O restriction. A ball and socket gives you an O restriction. V is for medical variants. These are very uncommon. Most of the time, medical variances are for somebody with a prosthetic limb, a glass eye, stuff like that. It's a very hard process to go through, and usually that's an intrastate license. It's not an interstate license. They can get a medical variance for interstate, though. So if you have it, you as an employer need to know what that medical variance is for from that driver. X is only found on permits. It says no liquid in the tanker. What it means is that if you have a CDL permit, you cannot operate a tanker vehicle with liquid in it. How crazy is that? How are we supposed to learn how to operate vehicles in a semi-safe condition? Well, this is the federal government and their wonderful ingenuity. So if you have a permit, a tanker's endorsement, you'll have a tanker's restriction, which means you can't operate a tanker vehicle with liquid in it. You can only operate it when it's empty. All right, Z is air over hydraulic. Very uncommon to find this. I've only seen it on one passenger bus ever in my entire career. The endorsements of a CDL are these. H for hazardous materials. If you're going to operate anything with hazardous materials, it requires you to have an H endorsement. The way you get the H endorsement on your license is by giving a background check. So you're going to submit fingerprints to the federal government. They're going to do a background check on you. And then you have to pass a written test. The written test is only good for 3 years, depending on the background check you get. It's good for anywhere from 3 to 5 years. Most of them are 5-year background checks. So most of the time, you just redo your background check when you redo your fingerprints. The background check does cost you some money, and it's very limited. If you need help finding a place to go, reach out to us. We can help you with that. N is for tanker. That means anything bigger than 1,000 gallons. That's permanently mounted. Anything bigger than 170 gallons, that's permanently mounted. Anything bigger than 1,000 gallons, that's not permanently mounted. Sorry about that. So if it's bolted to the frame, it's not considered permanently mounted. If it's welded to the frame, then it is permanently mounted. P is for passengers. Any vehicles that are designed from the factory to carry 16 or more passengers, even if they're empty, still requires a passenger's endorsement. S is for school bus. School bus is designed or defined as anything that's carrying students to or from a school function. So let's say I rent a Greyhound bus and I'm going to run students from their school up to the big city or to Mile High Stadium or something like that in Denver for a football game or for an awesome event. I have to have a school bus endorsement on my license in order to operate that because it is for a school-sponsored event. All right, and I am hauling students. T is for doubles and triples. That's doubles and triples and trailers. It's really pretty simple. X is for tanker and hazmat combo. So if you have an X endorsement, it means that you have both the hazardous materials and the tanker's endorsement on your license. So if you have an X, the N and the H endorsement will not be on your license. You will just have an X endorsement. All right, a few things you need to know about us is we offer training on all different levels for all different things. We're opening up a leadership coaching for people who are interested in growing their leadership, or if they have a manager that they want to get a better attitude or change their culture or help them grow to just be a great leader. We're doing that. We're offering that. We have training for drivers. We have specialized training. If you tell us what you need, guarantee we can facilitate a training for you and your guys. This isn't what we do all the time, but we are offering it right now for a limited time. If you guys are interested in some of this stuff, let us know. We even built onboarding courses for people. If you have a large company and you want all of your drivers to go through an onboarding course, we can build that for you, 100%. We are more than DOT. We also offer OSHA services, CDL testing and training, and then consulting. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to us at any time. We're always here to help, and you're going to find that we're super low pressure. We don't push a lot for things to happen. We just kind of help guide you along the way. I hate those companies that send out the letter, hey, you're in danger of facing $10,000 a day fines. That's a bunch of crap. I'm not saying it's not true, but they're trying to scare you into it. Most of the time, they don't even have a clue what they're doing. I saw this letter. It was so hilarious. They sent it to one of our customers, and the customer sent it to us and said, hey, Dan, is this real? I looked at it, and I said, no, it's crap. I can tell you it's crap within like 5 seconds. But anyways, I was reading through it, and it said, hey, your DOT number, it could be in violation. You're facing fines up to $10,000 daily for not having this in compliance. And it said the date your DOT number was last updated, January 7th of 2021. Date your DOT number was supposed to be updated February 1st of 2021. I was like, oh my gosh, we updated it a month early. We're not out of compliance, you freaking idiots. We're ahead of the game like we're supposed to be. But they sent him a letter and made him feel all bad and gave him scared. I hate that. Hate companies that do that. So if you guys get those letters, if you want help with that stuff, let us know.